Welcome. My name is Patricia Kranz. I'm the Executive Director of the Overseas Press Club of America. And we're delighted today to have one of our Zoom conversations between our 2020 award winners and the head judge of each of those awards. This is our fourth one. It's for the 3 photo awards. And so the first of our photo awards is the Robert Capa Gold Medal Award. It's for best photographic reporting from abroad requiring exceptional courage and enterprise. And the winner is Dieu, Nalio, Chery of the Associated Press for Haiti, Nation on the Brink. Then the Olivier Rebbot Award for best photographic news reporting from abroad in any medium was won by Moises Saman of National Geographic for El Salvador, a country in crisis. And the Best Feature Photography Award on an international theme in any medium is Rena Effendi of the Wall Street Journal for He Lost a Daughter to the Islamic State. Can he save his grandchildren? In a moment, I will turn it over to the head judge of the photo awards, Daniella Zalcman. She's a photographer based in Paris who founded Women Photograph, an initiative to help elevate the voices of women and non-binary visual journalists. At any time during the presentation, if you would like to ask a question, please click the raise hand feature. And when it's time for questions, we will unmute you and you can ask it. Or if you prefer to have somebody read it, just use the text part of the Q&A function. So over to you, Daniela.
Thank you so much, Patricia. And thank you to the OPC for hosting all of us, for putting on this event. I'm really honored to, for the second year, be the lead juror for the Photography Awards. And I just want to thank and acknowledge the other jurors for this year, who were Mikhail Simmons of the Solutions Journalism Network, Natalia Jimenez of the Washington Post, Cynthia Santos Briones, who's an independent photographer based in New York, and Noel Flores-Teilhard of the Magnum Foundation. So a big thank you to all of them for being part of this process. In addition to our incredible award recipients who we'll hear from this evening, I also want to acknowledge the photographers who were awarded citations in each category. So for the Robert Capa Gold Medal, that was Nariman El-Mufti with the Associated Press. For the Olivier Rebbot Award, that was Natasha Pisarenko, also of the Associated Press. And for the Feature Photography Award, that was Adam Ferguson with a project with Time Magazine. So as Patricia mentioned, this evening, I'll introduce each awardee and they'll speak for a bit about their work, and you'll have an opportunity to see their entry and their images, and then we'll open up for a Q&A. So please, as you look and listen to them, please, this is an amazing opportunity to engage with these incredible photographers. So please get your questions ready and we'll be able to open up for conversation. And we'll either, I think, be able to ask live by a video or by a chat. So we'll be able to monitor both. And then finally, before we do start the presentation, I do just want to say that there are a few graphic images. So for anyone who might have young children with them watching, I would just advise that this may not be best for super young audiences. So with that, I think we'll just get right to it and have the pleasure of starting with Dieu Nalio and his work from 2019. I think the Robert Capa Gold Medal, as you saw in that inscription, is meant to award the best published photographic reporting requiring exceptional courage and enterprise. And I think that courage in the context of photojournalism can mean a lot of different things, but especially this month, especially these past few weeks, as we think about the police violence and the brutality that we've been witnessing in the United States, and we think about the ways in which our colleagues are being harassed and assaulted simply for trying to do their jobs, simply trying to tell stories. It feels like a very relevant moment to hear about Dieu Nalio's work. And I'm just going to briefly read the jury's remarks on his body of work that involved covering clashes between police and anti-government demonstrators in Haiti last year. Local AP photojournalist Daniella Zalcman continues to show exceptional courage while covering protests in his home country of Haiti. In 2018, he was wounded while covering such a protest after a Haitian senator fired a pistol during a confrontation with protesters just outside Parliament. Even after being hit in the jaw with a fragment from the bullet, Chery remained to cover the chaotic scene. Chery's brave work highlights the unique dangers some local journalists face and overcome to cover the stories important to their community and to the world. Nalio joined the Associated Press in 2010 and has been both based in Mexico and Haiti for the AP, and also alongside his colleague Rebecca Blackwell, he was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize this year for this same body of work. So with that, I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. And Nalio, if you'd like to share with us about this work and your images. Oh, Nalio, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
There you go. Are you able to share with us a little bit about this work and these images?
Well, since the beginning of 2019, so the people are very angry, and the opposition was protesting, violent protests against the current president, Jovenel Moises. So there's a lot of big problems during the 2019 in Haiti. I think the 2019 was the worst year for Haiti's president, because we began with the Petro-Caribe protests, a fund that Haiti government that signed a contract with Venezuela to provide oil to Haiti, and the money go away somewhere, so people don't see what the money do in Haiti. So they are keep protesting, big violent protests, and also we will have a crisis of gas in Haiti. And as everyone knows, Haiti is a poor country. So when you have all these things, so the country is like broken. So in the middle of 2019, so the president don't have government. He didn't have a prime minister, so he tried to set up a government. So at that time, so the country, the people continue protesting, and they asked the resignation of the president. So the police keep shooting to the people, and you have in the same year, we have the kidnapping that ways up in the country. And in September, when the president trying to put a new prime minister, and when we arrive at the parliament, and we have all these problems, the opposition fight the pro-government senator. So there's a pro-government senator while they are shouting on him, because in the morning at the parliament on September 23rd on 2019, so they tried to ratify the prime minister. So the opposition senator didn't want that. And also the pro-government want to vote for him. So the clashes start inside the parliament. And at that time I got shot in my chin. But these things continue after my injury. So the country locked down for 3 months, from September to November. So can you imagine a country like Haiti locked down for 3 months, and children couldn't go to school, no business open, no bank, nothing open. So the country was totally, completely down. And people that was poor getting more poor, and people try to loot businesses, and police try to stop that. And the clashes was very, very big. And on 2019, Haiti lost 2 journalists. They killed them, they killed by the insecurity, and a lot of police got killed also. So Haiti right now is a country that is very difficult to work, because there's a lot of gang in the capital, and the government don't have control of anything in the country. So it's make my work more difficult to do in Haiti, but um, as I am working for the Associated Press, they already ask good work, and I try to work even the violent protest, but we have the training to work on that, and we try to protect ourselves. But while I'm taking this picture of the senator firing bullets, I wasn't very close of him, but I see the action and I expect something will happen, but I didn't expect that I will get shot. But that happened in the work. It is a very risky profession that we are doing. So I think I will talk more when people are asking more questions.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Finish sharing these images. And is this the moment? This is when you were shot?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
And also working with this gang in the capital is not something very easy, because we have a local journalist, a local photographer that named Vladimir Leganya, a late photojournalist. He went to a slum to cover an assignment, and he didn't return since March 2018. So working in Haiti with gangs, so you need to be very, very careful, and you need to ask for access with the head of the area, with the leader of the area.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah.
So that brings us to Moises Saman and his work, El Salvador, A Country in Crisis. I think the jury this year spent a lot of time talking about violence in photojournalism. How often we make those images, how often we see those images published, what they mean, what kind of impact they have on us. And the answers are complicated. I think we are constantly torn between understanding that we need to see the worst of humanity. We need to see atrocities that are being committed, and also what happens when we only consume those images, what happens when we place those images at the forefront of our consciousness and on the front pages of our newspapers day in, day out. I know that I personally, and I think the jury collectively, were really struck by this body of work, because it did include some brutal images that you'll see, but it also included images of humanity and hope that I think are often not part of bodies of work that I've seen coming out of El Salvador and out of this particular narrative. I'll just read the comments from the jury about Moises's work. The jury was drawn to Moises Saman's sensitive portrayal of the violence consuming El Salvador through the numerous lives impacted. Saman's images reflect the complexity of a situation that is too often only documented through scenes of gore. The humanity of the individuals entangled in this web comes across in each of his photographs, from the residents at the scene of a homicide to the young girl deported from the US. The jury awarded Saman for his holistic documentation that went beyond what could have been a superficial report. And with that, I'm going to share our keynote again. Oops, I'm sorry. Share screen. And Moises, would you be willing to take us through the work?
Sure, and thank you, Daniella, for this introduction, and thank you to the OPC for this great honor. And I just learning about the award also. I mean, I actually knew that, but I didn't quite make the connection. And is the fact that Olivier Rebbot was killed in El Salvador back in the early 80s, covering the civil war there, which is actually a huge reason for the current state of affairs in this country. And for me, El Salvador is a country that I've been working on and off for almost more than 10 years. But really the challenge with this story was to try to get a little bit beyond the what you were saying, the sort of stereotypical images of violence and that sort of thing. And I think, talking with my editor, Jamie Welfare at the magazine, at National Geographic, that was really important for him as well, to be able to sort of, provide a more layered version of events and a more layered sort of narrative that would get into the reasons why the country was in the state that it was. But it really all began as a story about immigration, you know. And I remember when we first started talking about this story with Jamie, it was in the aftermath of President Trump, basically deciding to end the temporary protection status of over 200,000 Salvadorians that were living in the United States, and you know, besides that, you know, we're talking in the context of this increase in amount of immigration rates in the United States and the forced separations of families at the U.S.-Mexico border. So we wanted to really, you know, understand what were the dynamics and what were the sort of drivers of you know, sort of seeing a second cycle of people wanting to reach the United States. And we wanted to understand, you know, why that was. And obviously, you know, violence is a big part, but so is poverty, and so is the legacy of the Civil War, which is something that to this day is a major sort of driver of some of the current dynamics in El Salvador. So you know, I had the opportunity to go to El Salvador twice for this assignment, and we, you know, we tried to sort of look at different aspects of what was going on. Obviously, violence was a huge issue that it's nothing new. You know, the country has been on a sort of, you know, what could be called a state of war between the gangs, and, you know, everybody has heard about you know, these very news-grabbing headlines of, you know, back in 2015 of murders being happening once every hour in El Salvador. And you know, but for us, it was very important to get to issues of poverty, to get to issues of violence, and to also understand how, you know, all of the major deportations, all of the people that were arriving back in El Salvador, what was their situation as well, and how were they faring sort of after arriving in a place that they hadn't been for so long. So I think, you know, beyond the violence, which again, it was obviously a big part of what was happening, we were also interested in the effect of religion was having in the country as a way of some people that were involved in violence to sort of be reborn and you know, find different ways of remaking their lives, and religion was a big part of that. But we also traveled to rural areas that sometimes, you know, don't get covered as much in the story of El Salvador, you know. So we traveled to the area of Morazan, which was, you know, one of the hotbeds of the insurgency back in the years of the Civil War. And that's actually where Olivier Rebbot was killed, in that particular area itself. But you know, it's, again, for us, it was very important to be able to tell a more layered story, one that just didn't end with the pictures of dead bodies on the streets of San Salvador, but a story that went a little bit beyond. And again, for me, particularly personally, you know, I like to think that in all of the work that I do, I you know, I try to focus on showing the humanity and the resilience of people that are living through extraordinary circumstances. And El Salvador is such a place, and it's a place that I care about, that I have many friends that were also incredibly helpful in you know, securing access to some of the places that we went. And you know, and I was just, it was a privilege to be able to tell this story, and it was a privilege to be able to have the luxury of you know, going to El Salvador more than once to try to understand what was happening there. And I'd be happy to take any questions, of course.
And just for my own curiosity, would you be able to tell us a little bit more about this image in particular?
Yes, so this one is, this girl became quite a famous case in El Salvador because she was separated from her father as they were crossing the border into the US. and they spent about 3 months apart from each other. And so after they returned to El Salvador, we tracked them down, and I wanted to take a picture of her reunited with her father, which is the young man that you see to his right, and to his younger brother, who's the boy that you see. So this is a moment in their home, since they're reunited, the father obviously is buying her cakes and balloons every day, basically, because he's like, sort of a newfound daughter. And this is just a moment in their home. This is a very poor family that decided that their only hope was to migrate to the United States. But they were arrested at the US-Mexico border and detained for months, and then sent to El Salvador.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. And then for the Feature Photography Award, we have Rena Effendi with us with her story for the Wall Street Journal. He lost a daughter to Islamic State. Can he save his grandchildren? This is a truly remarkable story, and I won't give anything away. I'll let Rena tell us about the story itself. But just to introduce Rena, she's an Azerbaijani photographer whose early work focused on the human cost of oil with a very long-term project that originally was not rooted in photography, but turned into a book that took her through Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey. She works routinely for National Geographic and the New Yorker and the New York Times and Time, and in this case, the Wall Street Journal. And the jurors' remarks on this particular body of work, where the jury was moved by Rena Effendi's thoughtful approach in telling the complex and personal story of Patricio Galvez, a Swedish citizen of Chilean descent who traveled to Syria to retrieve his 7 grandchildren. His mother joined the Islamic State and died as a result. Rena's photographs brought to life the statistics of thousands of children left behind as a result of war and the fraught nature of international response to the crisis. Her images made an impact on perceptions of the conflict through emotive, beautiful, and lyrical photographs of Patricio's journey to reunite with his grandchildren, galvanizing public discourse and offering a personal perspective on the cost of war. Let me go back to sharing. And Rena, if you'd be willing to walk us through this story.
Thank you, Daniella. Thank you very much, and thank you, OPC, for this award. I'm very honored. Yes, as it was introduced, this is a story of one man. It's a story of tenacity and leadership of this one person who was completely removed from the world where he found himself. He is a musician, a freelance musician, a Chilean immigrant to Sweden, and now a Swedish citizen, a grandfather of 7 grandchildren. His daughter, Amanda, converted to Islam when she was 17 years old and met a fellow convert and married him. He was a Norwegian Islamist, a Norwegian Swedish Islamist by the name of Michael Skramo. And by 2014, within a few years of marriage, and they've had, I think, 4 children at the time, they decided to go to Syria, where Michael Skramo became a jihadist recruiter for the Islamic State. She followed her husband. They had 3 more children in Syria. And as the coalition forces began an offensive on Raqqa, Amanda was wounded and killed. And later on, about a month later, Michael Skramo, the father of the children, was also wounded and killed by the coalition strikes. The children, 7 of them, between the ages of 8 and 1, ended up in a sprawling refugee camp in northeastern Syria, Al-Hol, where thousands of other ISIS family members were kept. And Patricio, to atone for the death of his daughter, decided it was his imperative for him to retrieve the children from that environment. So he packed a bag. It was absolutely incredible. When I first met him, he opened the suitcase, and I realized that none of the clothes inside the suitcase were for him. They were all for children. For himself, he packed a tiny backpack, and he took a smartphone on a selfie stick with which he documented the journey. He had no knowledge of sort of the local politics. He had no knowledge of Arabic language. He didn't understand. He was very far removed from the culture and from the region. But he was driven by this one imperative to bring these children back to safety. So he landed in Erbil, drove to Duhok, a city in Iraq which is closest to the border, and then went through the motions of crossing into Syria. We shadowed him, me and correspondent Isabel Coles, and we followed him into Syria and followed him for that week as he tried to meet with local authorities, tried to gain access into the camp to see the children. At that time, he also didn't have a concrete knowledge of where the children were. There was a rumor that they might have been at a hospital. So we followed him to the hospital. And it was at the hospital that for the first time, he discovered his 1-year-old grandchild, Mohammed, who he has never met before. He's only seen photographs of him. So he walks into the hospital and he's asking the doctors, have you seen this baby? He's showing them the picture of this blonde child. And he was finally directed to the floor where there was a row of cribs of children. And Mohammed was there. He identified him by a whiff of blonde hair. He picked him up, blonde hair. He picked him up and cradled him, as you can see in this picture. He was severely malnourished, almost motionless. He didn't respond. And in that moment, he held him for 10, 15 minutes and talked to him in Swedish and sang him a lullaby and told him that he's going to take him back home. There was a moment where the child grabbed his necklace and he made an eye contact with Patricia. It was a very emotional moment where everyone around sort of stood and had sort of seas of emotions coming through them. So it was a very difficult journey because of the reality, the political reality of the region. The forces that control the camp are the Kurdish forces that are not recognized as a state by any governments and are not recognized in Sweden. So it was a very difficult, contentious issue. And it was very difficult for Patricio to convince his government to work on his behalf on retrieving these children. It took him weeks and weeks of endless communication with Sweden. And I think what was the deal breaker in the end, it was his success in convincing the Chilean government to repatriate the children. And as soon as the Chileans agreed, the Swedes stepped up and agreed to start the negotiation. So he spent about a month in the region waiting. He spent a week in Syria and he was then asked to leave by the Kurdish authorities. And the thing that they told him, bring back your government next. And he went back to Erbil where he waited another 3 weeks, I believe, for his government to step in and resume the negotiations. And finally, the children were brought back to Erbil and they spent a week at the hotel. You can see them in this picture. And we went back to Erbil and spent a week with them. And then we flew back with him and the children to Sweden. So he managed to bring them back. At the moment, the children are are not with Patricia. They are separated. The siblings are separated and they're in several homes, foster homes and foster families, which is another kind of difficult point for Patricia because he feels like he failed them in some way of not being able to keep them together while in Sweden. And we followed him. We went back to Sweden to talk to him and photograph him in Sweden after the children had been repatriated. And sort of as a side story to that, we also went back to Syria, to Al-Hol, to look at the kind of current state of affairs in especially in the foreigners annex of the camp, where currently there are about 8,000 foreign children still in various camps in northeastern Syria, and the governments are making efforts, but not those efforts are very marginal to bring those children back home. So they are kind of, in a way, abandoned, and it's a major humanitarian crisis that the world has been largely ignoring. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's the story, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very much. Stop screen sharing. Great. So, Patricia, should I open up for questions? It looks like I don't.
Yes, I think it's a good time. It looks like there's just one one written question in the Q&A. I could read it if you'd like. It's for Dieu, Nalio. If Haiti was on lockdown for 3 months last year, what is the situation now with COVID-19?
Yes, after the 3-month lockdown, so the people breathe a little bit on December, and on January, on January 2020, so we start with other protests, and with the coronavirus, we have deeper problem right now because it's another lockdown, but in another way, so people are afraid to go out. And most of the people in Haiti, they survive day by day while they're going out to sell something or to work, And for now, it's really bad. It's really worse in the country because the people can't go out and they can, the commercial with the Dominican Republic stopped since March this year. So, and the country depend on other country. There's no flight, there's no crossing by the border. So we have a deeper problem right now, and the people start protesting for now to asking about the money that the government spent for the COVID-19.
Thank you. Let's see. A question for Rena. So why were do you know why the children were separated into different foster homes? And do you know if there's a chance that they'll be reunited? And then lastly, do you know how the baby's health is now?
So the Patricia is a freelance musician of limited means, and according to Swedish law, as far as I understand, the grandparents do not get automatic custody rights in such case. And also, if there are certain laws and regulations as to what your income should be if you are to adopt children, and Patricia did not qualify in terms of his economic situation for adoption. He has 2 of his own children already, and there are 7 more. It's just he lives in a small apartment in Gothenburg, and he is a freelance musician. So the children were, he fought for it. He fought for at least some of his family members to be able to adopt the children. But as far as I know, it hasn't been possible yet. They haven't been able to move forward on this yet. He does get to see them, but they're in various homes. They're not nearby. You have to drive a certain distance to get to them, and they're separated. I'm not sure what the plan is in terms of uniting them. For the health, they're all in really great health. Mohammed, the baby, was malnourished. If I saw his pictures now, it's like he's almost unrecognizable. He's, running and talking, and they're in fantastic health, and they're really well taken care of, and in far better conditions now than they were in the camp. But yeah, unfortunately, it's not, it's not that of a rosy picture in terms of him being able to care for all 7 of them and being able to adopt all 7 of them, qualifying for adoption of all 7 of them.
So here's a question specifically for Rena, but I might actually broaden it for all 3 of you. And the question is, when you travel to Syria, when you're in a hostile environment, essentially, or, you mentioned that you were with a reporter, but what kind of team are you traveling with? What other support do you have with you? And I think for both Nalio and Moises, it's an interesting question as well. You're both working in extremely hostile environments. What is work like on the ground for you? Are you working by yourselves? What precautions are you taking? Maybe Moises.
Well,
sorry, Rena.
sorry.
No, go ahead, Rena.
Moises, if you want to. Okay. Well, in that region of Syria, it's especially tricky because of the powers at play. There's even certain roads that you can't travel to because you can end up in a regime territory. And we crossed into Syria without Syrian visas because we went into the Kurdish territory. And that's a different authority than the Syrian government authority, obviously. So if we were to venture in the Syrian government area, we could have easily been detained, taken, or shot at, or anything else. So we had to have a local guide, fixer, not a guide, but a fixer who knew very well how to travel, who knew his way around the various roads, and also authorities who to talk to in terms of our access into places. Like everywhere you go, you have to get permission for access, like literally everywhere. So we had to have someone local with us all the time, and a driver and a reporter. That's it. We had some security, but it wasn't, we didn't have security on the ground with us. There was security kind of checking on us. We had to check in with the online system, but we didn't have security on the ground with us.
And what about for you, Moises? Well, what was that process like for you? Were you mostly working solo, and you're obviously a native Spanish speaker, or were you relying on others as you worked?
Yeah, no, I was working with a group of, it was me. I was also traveling with a writer, Jason Modlock, who's a very experienced writer that's covered different conflict situations around the world. But I think what really made the difference for us was to have the assistance of an incredibly talented group of local. I was working with a local photographer and a local journalist that worked with El Faro, which is an online publication. It's probably one of the best, well-respected investigative team that's working in El Salvador, working on issues that other publications are don't dare to touch. And so I think for me that was key, and to sort of work as a team with them. For them, they were very interested in having this story, and the commitment that the magazine had put to this story for them was also a source of some positivity, and they were very much interested in trying to get the story out. So the success or failure of this story really depending on them.
And Dieu, for you, this is your home and your backyard that you're documenting. Obviously, not a safe environment for you at all times. What were the precautions that you needed to take while you were working?
Yeah, in the protest, normally the Associated Press Office has 3 departments. They have text, photo, and video. So in the protest, we work together as a team. So we are stronger when police want to fight us or when the protesters want to fight us. So we are stronger. But working in the ghetto is like, I take the risk for myself because I just want to walk in the slum, want to see what people are doing because we find mostly the poor people in that area. So I take the risk by myself, but I have a fixer that I use every time I want to go in the ghetto. I call him and ask if the ghetto is okay to come in or is not. He will tell me the truth. And also, he will go everywhere with me and asking the gang people if they accept that I photograph them. Some of them don't. Some of them say, this guy is doing a good job, let him work. So it's the reason most of the gang players, they know me in Haiti. So when I go, I talk to them and I explain them why I am here, why I want to show what they are doing. And they accept, they mostly accept.
Thank you. This is another question for the three of you, and I think you each probably have very different concerns as it ties into this, but someone asked, what are the ethical challenges of depicting the people in your stories, of showing identity, of revealing who these individuals are? Rena, I wonder if you could start us off.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very tricky question in that particular story because, because of course there's stigma that's attached to where the children came from, what the choices that their parents made. They're innocent themselves, but they ended up in a very complex situation because of the choices their parents have made. And what would have happened to the children when they go back to Sweden and someone recognizes them as, children of ISIS, as they've been branded as children of ISIS. But in that sense, I was thinking, showing their faces would be very problematic. But at the same time, the one thing I didn't want to do is dehumanize. I didn't want to dehumanize these children. I wanted to show their faces in a way because they're children. We need to fight this kind of branding. We need to fight this kind of mentality. They're innocent children. It wasn't their choice. They're not combatants. They're not, they shouldn't be blamed for the mistakes of their parents. So I kind of tried for that particular story, I tried to kind of walk a very fine line. I showed the faces, but it wasn't too direct. The photograph, the most direct photograph is that of a baby, but I mean, as I said, now he's unrecognizable. I don't think any of these children that I photographed I would be recognizable now in Sweden because their hair has grown, they've put on weight, they've all grown, and I think they won't be really recognizable physically. If you see them on the street, you won't be able to tie them to the pictures I've taken. But yeah, this was constantly on my mind. But rather than putting a square on their faces and dehumanize them more, strip them of their identity of this kind of the visceralness of childhood, I decided to just use a more soft angle and not be too direct. And many of the pictures I've taken of them are kind of in half shadows, so I try to kind of be more sensitive in terms of showing faces. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, for you, so, in the US right now, we're having all of these complicated conversations with the Black Lives Matter protests that are happening across the country about, what happens, what do we owe protesters in terms of safety, especially when they're protesting law enforcement and governments, especially when, in the United States, law enforcement often weaponizes imagery against individuals to criminalize them and prosecute them. Is that something that you needed to worry about in Haiti? Is that something you were thinking about when you were out photographing demonstrations?
Me, right?
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. No, in Haiti, right now with the technology, is very easy for the people in the protest when you photograph them for them to see the image after.
Mm.
So sometimes we have problem where the people looking for the name of the photographer and to ask why you show this picture, why not? And sometimes I have people write me on Facebook to, to say me bad word. And sometimes they talking about why you show the bad side of Haiti. But, sometimes I explain them, I am a photojournalist. I have to show what is good and what is not good, what is functioning, what is not functioning. And, you know, sometimes I don't care about what they say, but when you are going to a ghetto, you photograph a gang member with his gun, so you have to avoid his face because otherwise you're gonna get killed. Even he give you the permission, you have to protect his face. So sometime I take the picture in an illegal way. You know, sometime I take the picture without asking, but I protect the face in a way. I crop the picture just to protect their face. And also, if I am patrolling with them, I really explain them what I am doing, because sometimes when they see your picture online everywhere, they think maybe you sell the picture for a lot of money, and they ask you question why you are selling my picture, you know. But sometimes you have to very calm with them, explain them why what you are doing. You are a photojournalist, why you are taking the picture, why you want to show the story. But compared to the Black Lives Matter for now in the state, it is really different because, you know, as everyone knows, USA is the first, is the where the democratic is more stronger. So when you see on a live police arrest journalists, it's really hard. And you know, for me, when I see the Black Lives Matter protest, I feel that I have to be there. And also I feel that I will be arrested because I will try to find the picture that I have to show to the public to explain the story. But I think police will realize they don't have to arrest journalists because we don't have problem with them. We show what we see. We don't add nothing to the picture. We don't restrain nothing also. I want everyone knows that photojournalist is friend with everybody and we have no interest in any side.
Unfortunately, sometimes it feels like the opposite, that we become enemies of everybody instead, right? But yes, that's a good way of putting it. That's a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
And Moises, what about you? I mean, very similar concerns that you have to think about working in El Salvador, but what are the primary concerns for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's always complicated. It's always sort of a dance, and you know, the trying to find the balance of how to be able to do your work effectively while also, you know, obviously respecting the wishes of your subjects. It's not as easy as it might sound sometimes. And in my case in El Salvador, I mean, obviously, anytime you go into an intimate setting where you're photographing people sort of, you know, one-on-one, there's a consent, obviously, you know, otherwise I wouldn't have made it into that room from the start. And you know, there's many times where, you know, I've been told, like, you know, like, I don't want to be photographed, or I've had to do it in ways that obscure somebody's face. The tricky part is more in public settings, and when you're sort of reacting to something that's going on the street, you know, as a journalist, you know, you're sort of trained, I guess, to you know, to sort of be these sort of fly on the wall approach, you know, which I think it's appropriate for certain instances, but not for everything, you know, and I think that then that goes also into the conversation of objectivity, etc., which is it's also a complicated one. But I just think, you know, in the context of this particular story, anytime that I was, you know, in a setting where it was me and my subject, of course I asked for their permission, and I explained to the best of my ability what the pictures were for, what the potential was of exposure, you know, and obviously what the aim was of the story that I was working on.
Thank you. Here's a question for Rena. Could you talk about the origins of this project? Were you part of sort of the pitching and development of the story? You know, how did you decide on this particular man to illustrate the story? You know, could you tell us a little bit about how it came about?
Yes, this was an assignment that came to me from the Wall Street Journal. And the writer, Elizabeth Cole, she was contacted by a relative of Patricia Galvez because she read she read Isabel's previous stories on Yazidi women, and she liked the coverage, so she contacted Isabel and said that talk to her about Patricia's plan to go to Syria and whether or not Isabel wanted to cover that. So Isabel pitched a story to the Wall Street Journal. And then the photo editor, Margaret Kitty, contacted me, and I jumped on the story.
Here's a question specifically for Dieu, Nalio. How has being injured impact the way you document Haiti?
I have been working for the Associated Press since 2010. And I documenting a lot of news, events, ceremony for Haiti. But I think it impacted the international community because most of the resources of Haiti come from the international community. So when the sponsor, the buyer, the people who interest in Haiti see what is happening, and I think they see, because sometimes there's a lot of NGOs that spend their money in Haiti and they think Haiti got changed, but Haiti never changed. And the situation of the people become worse every day. So when I documenting Haiti, it's because I want to get the attention of the international community. And I think it has some impact, it has it because sometimes even the president when he's talking, he always talking about why they show picture of protests, of tires burning in the street, of bad places, but in Haiti, when you go out, you just see, sometimes you just see poverty, you see trash in the corner. And, gangster control this part of the city. No police can go there. So this thing is what is the reason while I am covering the protest, but I try to show people who has control of the city. It's not something, I am just saying, but it's true. So when I show these things, it's because, Haiti was having the UN people for a long time in Haiti. And after they left, and you see the kidnapping, the insecurity, gangs, gang in Haiti is like normal right now because they are making money, they kidnap people, and no one can control them. So I take the risk to documenting, to witness every kind of thing that happened, just to show the human right when the right of the people is violated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Here's a question from a fellow photojournalist in London that I think is widely applicable to all photographers. You three in particular shared 3 very heavy stories today. And I think something that we're collectively as an industry very bad at doing is taking care of ourselves and understanding the impact that our work has on us personally. How do you all look after your mental health? How do you make sure that you're balanced when you are heavily emotionally invested in these really difficult stories? Maybe I can start out with Moises.
Yeah, it's also a complicated topic, but I think for me in particular, having a life that has absolutely nothing to do with my work is very important. And my family is very important to me. I am became a father recently, so that's completely changed also my perspective on what's important and what priorities sort of should be maintained, and sort of engaging with this other sort of dimension that again has nothing to do with the work that I do, brings me you know, some sort of you know, it helps. It helps, and it doesn't mean that it's you know, that you still don't have you know, moments where you feel more fragile or less, you know, but it's certainly it's necessary, I would say, to, you know, to not just be a one-dimensional type person that you know, only does one thing with life, you know, and for me it's helped quite a bit.
Rena?
Yes, I mean, in many ways, I agree with Moises. I'm also a mother. I have a family, and I have a home to come back to, and kind of unwind from a lot of things that I see on you know, jobs like this. Not all my stories are tough. You know, I kind of occasionally do culture stories and other sort of more positive stories, but even with this one, I see it as a positive story about humanity. You know, he managed to do what many people thought would be impossible, so it's almost like it has a positive ending in many ways. And I think over the years also you learn how to, by whatever means, to build some sort of resilience, because if you don't have that, it's very easy to fall apart, and then you can't really do the work if you're not you know, put together mentally. So it becomes really difficult to actually work. So it's important to have these moments of coming back home and coming back to your senses and spending time with family and doing whatever is necessary to recover from stress of the job. Then it builds you up, like you become stronger the next time you go out.
Well, yeah, for me, I am a crazy of photojournalist. It is a passion for me. It is a passion for me. So I always want to be inside the action, but just the camera. Sometimes I think I am a robot because, you know, I think it's the camera working and Chery is not there. But, you know, all the time, you know, I am young also, and I want to show. I want to show. You know, no. I want to say that I am young in the profession, and I want to show what I can do. So all the time, my boss called me, "Hey, Chery, you need to be very careful. You are too much inside the action. You need to be a little back, you know, because they advised me. I have 2 nice daughters, and I married with my wife, and, you know, I have a family to take care all the time. They said me, Chery, you need to be careful because you have your family. One picture will not change the world. You need to take care of you. You know, all the time they talk to me like that because they know that I am crazy. If the action happen, I want to be, you know, to take the better photograph. You know, I can do nothing for that. Sometimes you think that you have to not take the risk, but sometimes you just see you are inside the action. And in Haiti, I don't have, you know, good time, you know, pastime, hobby, because I always like stressed out, thinking about my work, you know, thinking I'm going out, I will face with gang people, you know, when you have to go to work to the slum, you know, your wife say, "Oh, Jay, are you going or not?" You know, sometimes you don't know what to decide or not, and you have to continue working. So, but I think I like photojournalists. I think I will have a good time until I finish with photojournalists. You know, when I finish, I said, okay, I take my time. I finish. I don't shoot picture anymore, so I will be okay. But So as soon as I am continue taking picture, I don't have a good time, a good life. Because, you know, when you visit some ghetto, you see the people, they can't eat. Sometimes you are doing a story about starving and you see the people, they can't eat nothing, you know. And it's not your right to give something to the people when you are working with them. But that put you down, you know.
Well, a big thank you to the three of you for sharing with us. I think that's a great note to end on. I'm glad to hear that it sounds like the AP is supportive of you taking care of yourself. I think we've all come a long way in this industry over the past few decades. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in and asked great questions. We really appreciate you joining us this evening or this afternoon, depending on where in the world you are. Patricia, any last wrap up?
Well, Daniella, thank you so much for moderating it and sharing all the astounding pictures that these three photographers took. And congratulations again to you three for your awards. And we hope you continue to enjoy your work and to stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you
everybody.
so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye. Bye. Bye.